This show is about two people giving their opinions. They are not experts on the matter. They are just people who want to have a chat. If you have any questions about morality or any other issues, please talk to the priest.
Yes or no? The internet has been a net positive for Catholics in the 21st century.
Absolutely no. And if anyone's watching this video, you are probably going straight to the bad place. No, I'm kidding. It's a little bit of exaggeration there, but it is ironic having this conversation on the internet, and that, you know, a lot of what we do is online, and we're having this conversation. You know, I'm in Germany, you're in Colorado. It does amazing things. And the fact that you and I can even communicate, the fact that I met my wife online and married her and was able to long distance date her for a long time, even though that was bad, but ended up being a good thing.
See, I don't even have to make any arguments.
I know, but I'm rounding this all up to say, I actually think it's a bad thing. And I think it comes down to, because I have to take my own individual thing out of this. I have to say, okay, you know, because I met my wife that way, but I do think God made us with, you know, like this really intrinsic way of being happy, you know, and I think really, really insight, especially men, women too. Women have different ways. I'm just going to talk about men. And I think we are intrinsically made happy by being outside, by building things, by seeing things grow, by exercise and healthy living, you know, healthy food, etc. We're not made intrinsically happy naturally by sitting and looking at a screen and chatting, and, you know, and I should also say having, you know, relationships in person, you know, conversations in person, beers with someone in person. And I think that is actually what deep down makes us, you know, actually satisfied, outside of God and religion, of course. And so I think that we actually have lost a lot, that we spend, I'm a great example, a lot of our time on the internet. And even with someone like you, who you're a great buddy, and I sincerely enjoy this, but how much are we actually missing out on, you know, in terms of happiness and time with our family or our friends, or our pursuits here? Or maybe, you know, what God made us to do, maybe it's to be farmers. I mean, I say that all the time. I think we were meant to till the earth, you know. I think we were meant to be hobbits in a lot of ways, you know, to have that simple life of gardening pumpkins. And so I think that it's a tough one, but I think really in the long run, I would say no, that I think we would be overall happier as people if we did not have technology.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to say, yes, the internet has been a net positive for Catholics. I agree with you on many things, like with the, you know, the happiness, and we spend too much time on it and everything. But having that information and knowledge there, how many individuals, how many families didn't come to the traditionalist position in the 70s, 80s, 90s because the internet wasn't there, right? How many looked around and were like, well, I guess this is what the church is doing, and they didn't know that there were groups that were, you know, maintaining the true faith. Now we have, you know, your show, we have all these different shows, and, you know, that the abundance of information also comes with its own problems. You have more splitting and more factioning, which, you know, that has its own problems. But still, I think from a high level perspective, the church, the true church, would not be as strong as it is now without the internet. And I think I'll stick to that. I feel pretty strongly about that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that. I think it's probably true, but I think it's also going to be a problem when we say the church, the situation we have now. We don't have a pope. We haven't since 1958, and so, as you said, you have a lot of these, you know, groups that gather together. A lot of it online now, and get a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas. What happens when we actually somehow, by a miracle or God's grace, of course, we actually do get a true pope? And I think the internet's actually going to be a problem, I think because there are going to be a lot of people who have there's just, no, this is this is not my idea of how we're going to get a pope. So no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to, oh, the pope said this. Well, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. And I think a lot of that, this having this information and having this ability to talk with people all around the world, some of them are geniuses and some of them are absolute morons who have a voice. And you get to have a lot of this garbage that floats around out there that you don't actually know what the truth is. And so if we actually have a true pope who's speaking the truth, are people actually going to hear it? I think that's a danger.
You're totally going to have the same thing without the internet, though, right? Now all you're doing is you hear, oh, we have this true pope in theory, and we're like, reading news articles from him, 2 days later after he puts something out. Like you're still going to have the same issues.
But you'd have less opinions. You'd have less knowledge on the matter.
You've had fewer opinions.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No, I'm just correcting you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. Well, sure. Yes or no? Fewer or less? Yeah. Fair enough. But yeah.
No, like the people who are not. So in the situation where we get a true pope, you're going to have a lot of people who don't follow that true pope because we're so used to being, without one. And that's a terrible thing. But those people who are going to do that are going to do that regardless of whether there's internet or not, or whether or not they have a lot of information.
Do you think the internet doesn't play a role in that it doesn't make people more stuck in their ideas, or just more people just hear all these things? I mean,
it divides. It divides for sure.
Right now that there are so many fights, and unnecessary fights that go on. And we all know about it. We all see it, or many of us see it because it's right online. And we're like, oh boy, someone said this, and now everybody knows it. But back in the day, you would have been like, maybe you would have heard some rumors somehow that someone said something, but almost surely not, because these conversations would have happened in person. There wouldn't have been, not even newsletters, really. So maybe they would have printed something, but you're not going to be saying something nasty about someone in a newsletter, most likely. But on the online, it just makes everything so much easier to have these strong, harsh opinions. And again, I can speak for myself that, I have a ton of really dumb opinions, and I think I'd have a lot fewer if I wasn't online.
Well, it hugely divides and makes everyone go into their own little bubbles, and you have your own little news information clicks and stuff, right? But the alternative is having a single source. And, people always say like, oh, we're so divided. We have all these different news stations which tell you different things and stuff. But what we had back in the 50s and 60s and going back all the way, you had a single source of truth, right? Everyone watched the same news, Walter Cronkite, everyone watched that. And so we were more united, but we were also much more easily misled, right? How much of that stuff everyone was united on was not true.
Yeah, but I would also say, look at it. When Gutenberg, first, had his printing press, the Catholic Church actually kind of freaked out. It was really kind of like, oh boy, this is bad. This is going to be a bad thing. And it was immediately. I think within like 3 years, it was used to print Luther's pamphlets and to print Luther's version of the Bible. And so what happened was you had this dispersion of bad material, because all of a sudden it wasn't the Catholic Church that was teaching. It wasn't priests. It wasn't bishops or monks that had studied and learned that were teaching you about the Bible. All of a sudden, Joe Schmo could have a Bible, and it was a big problem. And now I expand that by a billion, a trillion, and that's what the internet is.
But looking back now, would you look back and say the press and books are a net positive for Catholicism or not? I would say books are a net positive. You know what I mean? Like a new technology comes out, and evil is much quicker than we are to jump on it. But then after time, in hindsight, with the guidance of the church, it's, made into something good. I would say printing of books is a net positive. And I think 500 years from now, the internet will be a net positive because it will have been foundational in bringing people to the truth.
So yes or no? I'm going to bonus question, everyone. Yes or no? Your life now is better than it would have been in 1200 in England.
Yes.
I'm going to say no. and again, it's totally subjective. We don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people would say, yeah, well, there were Vikings and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's true. So you have like a lot better likelihood of getting hit with an axe in the face, and that is a negative.
Yeah.
But take that out of it. Take out the risk. I'm just saying, like your actual substance as a human being on earth, and with your family and with your friends and with the church, with your mentality of life. And I think that we have too much knowledge. I think we have too much information. I think you look at education systems around the world, look at colleges and kids going to college and they get a degree that they don't really want or didn't really care about it, because I think part of it is because they had too many options. We have too many options when you turn on the computer, when you look at YouTube, when you look at, there's just too many choices. And I think back in the day, it was much more like, hey, you can do this, or this. And, that's it. And I think that actually led to happiness. I think there was a simpler life where you could just say, my dad was a blacksmith. No, I'm going to be a blacksmith. And I think I think that's a plus.
Simpler. Yes. I'm going to retort with a yes or no of my own. Yes or no. Would you be a better Catholic in 1200s than you are now?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You know the saying that the greatest saints are the ones at the end times,
because they have it the hardest. Exactly, because they persevere through it. I think it was a much easier time to be a Catholic in the 1200s.
But is easier mean you're a better saint? This is my point.
I think you had a more likelihood of being a saint in the 1200s.
A likelihood.
I think look at how many saints were canonized from the 1200s. Look how many were canonized in the 1700s. You had this enlightenment, and all of a sudden,
in an individual level, those saints still had the same struggles to get to where they are from a sanctity perspective.
Sure.
Right? We have so much more to contend with than they did. If you were in the 1200s and it was like, well, I'm born Catholic, everyone's Catholic, this is easy, you would have taken it for granted potentially. It would have been harder to have advanced. You would have had less credit for being so, right? If we're truly Catholic in these times of confusion, it's by the grace of God, of course, but we also get a lot more credit for it now because of all these other things than we would have back then.
Sure. But back then you would have been fast. So for Lent, it was like a vegan fast where you ate like once a day. I mean, their Lent was extreme because there was, it was easier. Yeah. Because it was easier because your lives, you were so much more spiritual. It was so much easier,
but easier does not equate to.
No, that's what I'm saying though. That's why you had to sacrifice more. That's why your saints were the ones who were kneeling on top of pillars for their entire lives. I think you did. I'm agreeing with you. I think you did have to have a much more austere, extreme form of faith. But I still think that you just had less distractions. I just think that, sure, you still had distractions. There was still sin. There was still, lust and drunkenness and all these. Of course, that's always existed. I mean, since original sin. But I still think I do think it would have been easier to be a Catholic in the Middle Ages.
And I guess my argument is, I don't care if it was easier or not.
Oh, okay. You said, would you have been a better Catholic? That was the question.
Yeah.
Then I would say that I will answer with yes. I do think I would have been a better Catholic in the Middle Ages.
Okay. I'm thinking. Interesting.
And what was our original question? Now I had to go a little bit back. Okay.
Is the internet a net positive for Catholics in the 21st century?
I'm still
saying yes.
No.
Okay.